So with that, I want to introduce you to Jennifer Backman and Mark. And Mark, make sure I pronounce your last name correct. Saint-Ange.
Ah, excellent. Très bien.
All right. Those years of high school French would pay off someday. So Mark is the CEO of Ben Beauty, and Jennifer is in product development, and I think has her fingers in just about everything at Ben Beauty. So Mark, why don't I hand it over to you and Jennifer to kind of share with everybody your story. If you have a presentation, you just need to click on the screen, and you can take possession of the presentation.
Thank you, James. And we absolutely do have a presentation. And I just want to thank you all for your time today. And thank you, Michael, for completing the learning management system. It's really a great foundation or follow-up to the training that we're going to do today. So really the goal is we wanted to do a bit of a meet and greet, give you a foundation on who we are at Bend, what our products are, and then, of course, inviting Mark here because Mark is our founder and our formulator of all of our products. So although I do have my hands in lots of things, and sometimes I try to stick my nose where it doesn't belong, but my goal has always been focused on business development with Bend. I started with the company, my gosh, 7 years ago. Our products were kind of birthed from another company that Mark owned, and it was focused in essential fatty acids. So we were the #1 fish oil company in Canada, and we sold into health food retail, drugstore mass, and more of that retail channel. And we started to get some really incredible feedback on one of our core products. And so that really elicited Mark to start thinking, what else has an affinity for the skin? And of course, Mark can speak to this a little bit more, but he's quite interested in anti-aging and how the cell works and really about slowing down that aging process. So he started to think what else works for the skin, and that's when our products were born. So Mark was approached, I guess it's been 4 years ago, to sell that company, sold the company and carved out what we now call Bend Beauty. So I've been with the company kind of navigating this whole ingestible beauty in the spa, med spa world. And it's been an interesting ride. Going back 7 years ago, you just would not see an ingestible on the shelf of a spa or a medical spa or dermatologist. Really, it's always been focused on, the topical products, the topical services. And really, the one thing that you're asked is, how much water do you drink, or have a green smoothie? Now fast forward 7 years, we spend a lot of time really learning the channel and figuring out what works. And, we've realized that we absolutely do belong on the shelves of spa and med spa. When you think about it, it's really that missing piece to the puzzle. As James, gave his lovely story, his intro story, we talk about the topicals, it's so important, but really our bodies heal from the inside. And that's really where you can get some active ingredients to the dermis layer. So that's where we kind of sit. We are designed to complement the products and services that are already being offered in spa and med spa and with derm. So that's who I am. You'll see me a lot as your key support person when it comes to all things sales. So today we put together a presentation that's more product focused to really get you savvy on what these Bend products are and how to sell them. When we do our launch in July, we'll go a little bit deeper with the science in a training, and I'll also do a bit more of a sales presentation for you. And we can talk about more in-clinic vibes. But between now and July, we're going to talk a lot. I'm going to be here for your support, and I know I'll be a part of other meetings that you're having as well. So over to Mark. He has a presentation that's about 45 minutes long. And obviously, we welcome Q&A afterwards as well. So Mark.
Thanks, Jen. Of course, I'm just looking forward to getting to know the team at Aesthetic AMD. So call this the initial meet and greet. Yes, we're going to jump into a little bit of company and product information, but for us, it's really important that we partner with companies that are a really good fit. So we truly believe that business is a force for good, and that we need to really have that shared vision of creating that transformation, creating that value in the marketplace. It's our virtualized world these days is helping us to establish connections when we can't be physically face to face, but certainly look forward to meeting each and every one of you. So Jen told a little bit of the backstory. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur in the nutraceutical space for about 22 years. A big part of that was, founding and growing a large, omega-3 fish oil business with a leader in Canada and international distribution. But it was really back in 2009 when we started to kind of really think about what were some of the macro trends that we were kind of predicting that is going to drive future growth. And one of the macro trends that we felt really, really strongly about was this convergence of healthcare and skincare. Right. And so the skincare industry from, I'd say a little bit of a narrow focus, with topicals, products and services, has gone through a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of great products and a lot of great, services and technologies being applied in the professional skincare space. But of course, we're seeing it from a completely different perspective. And what we're seeing in the world of healthcare is this emergence of what we call functional healthcare or functional medicine. And what functional medicine was helping us understand is how interconnected the body is, right? To the extent that a functional medical practitioner, if they want to treat the heart, they treat the whole body. If they want to treat the liver, they have to treat the whole body. And so hence we come to the point using a scientific lens that we can say functional skincare, if we want to treat the skin, we have to treat the whole body. And that's really where we emerged. And we know that ingestibles was a very new concept for the channel that we were introducing this to. And to do that, we needed to build a lot of trust. We need to have the science forward, the education forward, which required a lot of investment on our part. Nutraceutical companies in general don't do a whole lot of science, let's be honest. I think some of the companies that you've associated yourself with to date are the minority of ones that actually invest in doing clinical research and really have that domain expertise to kind of support you from the technical side. Ben Beauty is the same way. We are science forward. We started with a hypothesis. We invested significantly in the science to really emerge as a pioneer in the evidence-based ingestible beauty space. And the nice thing about what we do is we like to say it's beauty that you can see and feel. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a presentation. Feel free to kind of stop me at any point and just say, look, can we unpack that a little bit more? I didn't understand something. And look, and we're here for the long run. So, and hopefully you don't feel like we're throwing too much at you today. But there's going to be a ton of opportunities to focus on certain areas, just repeat the content. Some of this is housed within the LMS. LMS is still fairly high level. We're actually going to dive a little bit more into one of the areas that we super passionate about is actually the science. And me as an entrepreneur, a human on this planet, I have my own personal positioning. And my positioning is really as an entrepreneur to kind of, I say, safeguard future generations. We absolutely need to transform our economy, and we have to do this now. And what I really believe is companies, as a force for good, really need to start to focus a lot more around environmental sustainability and the collective well-being of our global community. So obviously what we're doing here at Ben Beauty has a strong environmental focus. We can get into that either today or at another time. And skincare. Skin is one of the key organs within our body. It is part of our need and our ability to feel and look healthy, beautiful. So we started with this kind of philosophical underpinning, and we say, when you nourish all the connections, something beautiful happens. And this goes back to this idea that the world today, on many, many levels, is shifting from this narrow, myopic view of life, including of our body, to this more holistic view, to say, look, everything in this world is connected, right? And within our body, we talked about functional healthcare, functional medicine. We need to look at treating the whole. And when we actually can really nourish all those connections inside of us, something really beautiful can happen. And that's really the emergence of this, the other side of the coin of the skincare, methodology of topical plus ingestible. That is best care. I sometimes say we're shifting from skincare into best care. So we were really, really excited to connect with James. James, your mindset is already there. You're looking towards how to create such unique positioning in the marketplace, how to expand, and what we say, we're bending beauty. So we're actually trying to help the industry say, look, even the business opportunity is not this, right? You're missing so much, because the real business opportunity is more like that. And to do that, we need to really introduce this holistic approach of topicals plus ingestibles. And you don't have to take our word for it. A lot of the industry publications are talking about the next big wave of growth, revenue growth within the professional skincare industry is coming from ingestibles or nutraceuticals targeted for skin. We talked about functional skincare. It's going to be a term that's going to be used a lot more. And let's be honest, consumers are becoming more and more savvy, and they're approaching your clients, your customers, say, look, I've been reading articles about this. I want to learn more about that. So this wave is coming. We have an obligation, responsibility to help our channel, our customers, to be prepared for this. Okay. Once again, industry insights, everything is supportive. A lot of people don't realize, they realize the dietary supplement industry is massive, $133 billion market. What they don't realize is that today, a fifth of supplement users are in the US market, are taking those supplements for a skin, hair, nail benefit. Now, supplements for skin, hair, nails have been around for decades, but these are very generic, kind of drugstore brands that really don't have anything other than a bit of a marketing push. There's no science really to support them. They've generally been very much about general nutrition. We know that, this category within the spa channel is predicted to grow. And even a lot more, health food retailers are building out shelf sets really focused around the ingestible beauty. So the timing is perfect. Let's stay ahead of the curve. Let's take advantage of this macro market trend. So going back to the science, what's really presenting a great opportunity here is how the evolution of the field of science, in particular the field of aging, the science of aging, and how the body ages, how our cells age, how our skin ages at the molecular and genetic level, is giving us new insights and new approaches that we can apply, in terms of our proactive skincare regimen to produce the best results. And a lot of this is centering around this whole idea of the cellular environment, right? So what is the cellular environment? Well, that is, everything, all the fluids and the non-cellular material that surround our cells. So the best way to explain it is really unpacking this particular research study. So this was not actually a Ben study at all, but I think it really highlights this idea that the behavior inside the cell is reflective of the environment that surrounds the cell. So these researchers were really looking at collagen formation. And what we know is that from the age of 20 to about the age of 80, you have a massive decline of around 70% in terms of loss of collagen production. Well, collagen is the main structural backbone of our skin. It gives us the elasticity and firmness. It is a major sign of youth. But as of the age of 20, it starts to decline about 1% per year. It goes through a bit of an acceleration during menopause. So what they did is they recruited two groups of volunteers. Group 1 had an average age of about 80. Group 2 had an average age of around 20. So there, that huge kind of differential of, that 70% in collagen production. Visually, we can see, we know what a 70-year-old or an 80-year-old looks like, and we know what a 20-year-old looks like. So what they did is they did a biopsy, skin biopsies, and they actually looked at the collagen production that was represented in the two groups. And, it just kind of confirmed what many other studies have concluded, is that the gap in production of collagen is around 70%. The next part of the trial is actually where it gets really interesting, because they took the same cells from those two groups of volunteers and they incubated them in the exact same medium, right? So the only thing they changed is the environment of the cell. The old cells were still the old cells and the young cells were the young ones. Nothing changed around that. So when they were actually introduced into identical medium between the two groups, what did they observe at this point? Wow, what was really remarkable is the older group, the 80-year-old group, the rate of collagen production was dramatically increased, right? In fact, at the end of the trial, when they looked at the collagen production, that's the gap of 70% came down to around 37%. So that is dramatic. When we talk about how to support our clients, the users, the patients, with the products and services to rejuvenate, the first thing we have to realize, there's a whole lot of rejuvenation that can happen. So these old cells that we just label as old and dysfunctional, they're not really. If we can change the environment surrounding the cells, what we can do is unlock a lot of that youthful potential that's still sitting inside everybody. So I think that's a really key concept that we need to kind of bring forward, and it helps us to tell our story. So when we talk about the environment, another word we can use is climate, right? So climate are those kind of the long-term kind of weather patterns that exist, and they truly have an impact in terms of, when we think of in the classical sense, the difference between, a lush jungle versus an arid desert. It really it determines what can grow and how things grow. And the environment can create an awful lot of stress on, the vegetative species. So we like to term this concept as skin climate. And so what really is skin climate? Well, it's really the prevailing conditions, those long-term patterns that exist within our skin. Now, specifically, it's the internal body chemistry that governs the breakdown, repair, and overall health and longevity of the skin, right? So that internal chemistry sitting within you, not necessarily the cells per se, but the environment that you've created to support those cells is the major kind of levers of the breakdown and degeneration of the tissues, the repair, the capability of repair and rejuvenation, the overall health, and then the actual longevity, of the body and of the skin. So the centerpiece of all this, in terms of when we describe the internal body chemistry, we're really going to hyper-focus around these two concepts of chronic inflammation, which is inflammation that exists in the absence of trauma, in the absence of infection, the absence of any kind of real present danger or stressor, and the free radical stress that is always kind of a component of states of inflammation. Now these unfortunately, what we know very, very clearly, has been well studied, chronic inflammation is increasing as we age, right? And so if the chronic inflammation is increasing, what are we doing? We're dramatically shifting the internal body chemistry more towards the breakdown versus the repair, right? And of course, the chronic inflammation, on top of the age-related increase, there's also the dietary factors, the lifestyle factors, and environmental stressors, UV being kind of top of the list, that actually, it's like putting your foot on the gas pedal. Inflammation is so central to this theme of aging that medical researchers have actually coined a term called inflammaging, which, you know, as is kind of, you know, spelled, this is just the combining of inflammation plus aging, right? So it's generally, you know, it's described as an age-related increase in chronic inflammation and loss of cellular function. And this, of course, is showing up in terms of skin aging as well as pathological conditions in the skin. Don't need to really memorize this. It's just showing the cascade of how inflammation shows up, and ultimately, you know, regardless of the complex chemistry of inflammation, what does it do? Well, it's activating enzymes that are breaking down hyaluronic acid, you know, the elastin and the collagen in the skin, among other things. So with skin climate, we basically call the skin climate system. And these are what we believe are the key internal whole body functional systems that really need to be addressed in order to build and optimize you know, an ideal or more youthful skin climate. So when we want to turn back the clock, if we want to rejuvenate the body, rejuvenate the skin, take that anti-aging approach, we really need to kind of look, drill down into, of course, we mentioned chronic inflammation and free radical stress. The gut-skin axis is becoming, you know, a more talked about term. Your skin and your gut lining are part of the same, you know, organ system, right? So they share a lot of similarities. So a lot of times what happens is irritation and inflammation in the gut is going to manifest in some capacity within the skin. Same thing with the liver skin axis. You know, we live in a world, a society that is always presenting, you know, an excess of environmental toxins. Our bodies are really good at detoxing, but as we get older, they become less efficient. And when those toxins start to build up, well, your skin is a secondary detoxification organ. So there are ways that we need to support the different phases of detoxification that happen within the liver to properly metabolize these toxins and make sure that they're not creating a negative impact within the skin. Environmental stress is a key one. We mentioned that. Psychological stress. The research now is supporting a whole new field of dermatology called psychodermatology, where they're kind of identifying very direct connections between certain psychological or emotional states, especially chronic ones, and how they manifest in terms of skin conditions, skin pathologies. It's a new field but growing. And then overall, how do we stimulate the rebuilding of tissues, the growth and metabolism of, you know, the key tissues that have deteriorated over time? So these are all kind of key components of the skin climate system. And this is kind of really representative of the long-term kind of, you know, investments in research and product development for Ben Beauty. So just quick, I think we already kind of touched on this. You know, collectively, we have an awful lot of experience in the field of nutritional research, and especially, you know, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, and both chronic and acute inflammation. Because we're in Canada, we're subject to probably the world's most rigorous regulatory framework for natural health products, called the Non-Prescription Natural Health Products Directorate, It is considered the international gold standard for natural product regulation. It's before any product can go to market, it needs to be evaluated for its safety, its efficacy, and finished product specifications. So this means that companies have to submit a whole dossier containing that information. There's a lot of work for these companies, and you can't go to market until you get it approved. Now, if you're looking to make unique claims, you have to support that with a fairly significant body of evidence to support its efficacy in your targeted population. And back 5-6 years ago, we became the first company in Canada to get approved, official claims approval for anti-aging skincare, including the first claim for UV protection from an ingestible product. All right. So as you already know, research is really important to us. We love to geek out on the science, but we have a lot of experience, and we have a very focused approach to the science. We've made significant investments in terms of our research capabilities. In-house, we have 2 research laboratories. One is really about the product chemistry, including product stability. And the other one is really about doing cellular research. So our in vitro studies where we look specifically at human skin cells. We have conducted 1 full clinical trial. We're working towards a second one. And one of the areas we're trying to really lead with our scientific depth is really this idea of UV protection from the inside out. 2 people from our wonderful team. So if we go back to kind of skin biology 101, we really, we get hyper-focused around the epidermis and the dermis and, the key characteristics. The cells of the skin, one of the main functions is to protect us from environmental, stressors or contaminants. And generally a healthy epidermis is a very effective barrier for things not getting, beyond that layer of the skin. Certainly in the professional field, there are techniques and some specialized delivery systems that we can get some things through the epidermis into the dermal layer. But, for the most part, if we really want to have an impact on the dermal layer, we have to realize that there's all this vascularization. We have small blood vessels that are transporting nutrients and removing waste. So why not make good use of that? We have an efficient transport system into the dermal layer, and then the dermal layer on top of that will start to diffuse nutrients into the basal layer of the epidermis. So this is why, certainly, there's no doubting that topicals play an essential role for really improving the health and condition and the appearance of the epidermis. But the skin is a much, much more complex, organ, and we want to go all the way to the deeper layers of the dermal tissue. And that's that whole idea of, 1 + 1 is, equaling 3. So this is today the core product line. We have two real product formulations. They come in multiple formats, but the anti-aging formula is more the foundational product. That's where we've invested really the big science. And that's really, when we go back to this whole idea of the skin climate, this is the product that really is the skin climate optimizer. It's really pulling those big levers. The collagen product, it's an incredibly important category, and it's a nice kind of boost kind of product layered on top of the anti-aging formula. We always get the question like, well, if I'm only going to buy one, which one do I buy? Well, you always buy the anti-aging formula. But we certainly can advise that, to get the additive or synergistic effect, combining the two is a great option if you can do that. The skincare formula, the anti-aging formula, these are the official claims as approved by Health Canada. So helps increase skin resistance to UV-induced sunburn, helps improve skin hydration, helps improve skin elasticity and firmness, helps improve roughness and redness. So in Canada, it's actually approved as a treatment for atopic dermatitis. So that is one of the specific claims that we have in Canada, but the FDA does not allow drug claims in the US. So, we do not have that on the labels in the US. And then just a general source of antioxidants. Here are the active ingredients. So there's 6 different ingredients. The first 3 are essential fatty acids. So we have EPA and DHA, which are derived from fish oil. We have GLA, which is derived from the borage plant. So it's borage seed oil. It's an omega-6, but for anyone that kind of thinking, oh, well, I thought omega-6s were pro-inflammatory, that they actually increase inflammation in the body because we get too many of them. Well, GLA is a very unique form of omega-6. And in the presence of adequate levels of the omega-3s, GLA does something really special in the body. It protects and fortifies all of our linings. So the lining of our skin, the lining of our gastrointestinal tract, the lining of our lungs, the lining of our blood vessels, so the endothelial lining. GLA, when you can influence it down the anti-inflammatory pathway, becomes an essential anti-inflammatory component of all of our linings, and lots of really good research for supporting skin health. The next 2 are carotenoids, which are a form of antioxidants. These are actually essential nutrients. Your body cannot make these 2. Most people know zeaxanthin and lutein as supplements for eye health. Well, one of the interesting things about the eyes, like of course in the macular region of your eye, there's these densely packed pigments. Well, those pigments are zeaxanthin and lutein, and they protect the sensitive eye structures and the neurons from ultraviolet damage. Without them, we'd all have macular degeneration by the time we're 12. We'd be blind. So they're really unique antioxidants and form a very specific function. Well, there's one other organ that is under constant stress from UV radiation. So it's the eyes and the skin. And so they seem to have co-evolved to have a special need for elevated levels of zeaxanthin and lutein. So when we ingest nutrients into our body, they don't get evenly dispersed, right? When specific nutrients like, we'll say, zeaxanthin and lutein are ingested, the body says, okay, first we have to replenish all the stores in the macula of the eye. We have to saturate or top up all the levels in the skin. They get saturated in the brain, which we're still trying to learn, the role that they play in protecting our brain cells. And then it can go everywhere else. So it's clearly that because of the UV, the anti-UV properties of zeaxanthin and lutein, that they're specialized helpers within both the eyes and the skin. And then vitamin D, as we built this kind of culture that becomes a little bit more fearful of sun and overexposure, we're spending less time outside, we're applying lots of sunscreens, we're wearing clothing to cover our body, and hence we have fairly wide clinical deficiencies in vitamin D. And vitamin D actually plays a very big role in inflammation, including in the skin. And speaking of sunscreens, most people today are, for the most part, when they go outside, they apply some kind of sunscreen. It's a massive industry. I think sunscreens alone are a $10 to $20 billion industry. There's around 10 10,000 metric tons of sunscreens being produced every year. And you say, well, that's a good thing because people need to be sun smart, because, you know, what does overexposure lead to? Well, accelerated aging and risk of skin cancer, right? But there is a growing concern about these particular ingredients that we're formulating these sunscreens. So there's a toxicology associated with our human body and a toxicology associated with the environment. In particular, the effect that it's having on our corals, leading to several places in the world already implementing bans around the use of these sunscreen ingredients. And these are the main sunscreen ingredients, right? So this has a lot of the manufacturers of the world kind of concerned about their ability to continue to produce and promote these particular sunscreens. So Hawaii and Florida are kind of like the two areas of the US that are implementing bans. So we're not here to say that topical sunscreens are bad. What we're here to say is that the state of that industry is now kind of looking internally and say, look, the solutions that we've developed are not solutions that we can go forward with, because it's very clear that these ingredients are getting into our bodies, acting as endocrine disruptors. It's getting into the environment and wreaking havoc. So there needs to be a whole new kind of strategy kind of put out there. One of the things that I like to tell people is, like, when you talk about our immune system and defending against, you know, viral and bacterial infections, the first thing we kind of think about is our body's own ability, building immune resilience. So really healthy, functioning immune system can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? We can kind of use that same analogy when we talk about this idea of UV resilience. So I think that's a really great term, is to say UV resilience. That's one of the things we want to be building. And that's really the pioneering work that Ben Beauty has carried out. And so we ran actually a human clinical trial. And this trial was designed a lot like the same way that you would test a topical sunscreen. Sunscreens work, you know, it's just you apply it when you need it. Nutrition works in a different way, because as we know, when we ingest these nutrients, it takes a while for those levels of those nutrients to saturate in our skin, right? In fact, for the anti-aging formula, it's estimated to get full saturation, you're looking at about 120 days. But it's very expensive to run human clinical trials. And on top of that, we kind of internally said, look, we need to be able to prove efficacy in a much shorter time frame with our product. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to get consumers really bought in to get the second bottle, the third bottle, and really make this part of their overall kind of regimen for being sun smart. So we ran this for 8 weeks, 3 time points, baseline, 4 weeks and 8 weeks. What I thought was really, really exciting, well, certainly after 8 weeks, 84% increase in the skin's resistance to UV burn, so increasing the burn threshold. But just after 4 weeks, so just within the first bottle, it increased by almost 40%. Even the researchers who ran this trial, this was a contract research organization, so we farmed out this particular study. They were surprised. They'd never seen from an ingestible product anything with that effect size. So for us, it was a really, really exciting time and validation for the research that went into this. Now, as I mentioned, we also invested heavily in internal capabilities to do studies that are very important for us to understand how our products work. So looking kind of at the mechanism. And so we have a cell biology laboratory where we do in vitro studies with human skin cells. And within the next probably month or two, Our second study will be published in the Journal of Natural Products Research. And this is just kind of a preprint version of this. And it's, the title of this study is really way too long. Sorry about that. But essentially,
They aren't intended to be.
Yeah, we need some kind of a cool, funky acronym for this. But we took the anti-aging formula in human dermal fibroblasts, primary dermoblasts, and we subjected it to a number of different control conditions around UV and then free radical stress. And what we're looking to do is really understand at the cellular level, what is the mechanism by which this formulation really works to support, skin health and that anti-UV effect. So as a summary, the anti-aging formula exerts both UVA and UVB photoprotective effects when applied to these primary dermal fibroblasts. And it's really the combined effects of each of the individual ingredients that were required to mediate the full UVA photoprotective effect. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail so you clearly understand what I'm talking about. But in addition to that, the treated cells versus the control cells, the treated cells with the anti-aging formula, what they showed was a dramatic increase in the expression of genes associated with our main antioxidant pathways, what we call cellular antioxidant enzymes. So the glutathione, peroxyredoxin, thioredoxin. So these are really key ways that the body builds resilience and defends itself against these, these stressors, UV or otherwise. So we have the upregulation of antioxidant genes, but at the same time, we actually saw from a genetic level the expression of inflammatory genes, including COX-2, significantly downregulated. And of course, this COX-2 and we'll call the prostaglandin E1 or E2 pathway is precisely the one that is implicated for the initiation promotion of skin cancers. From a visual perspective, if we look using what we call confocal microscopy, where we actually fluoresce the cells so that you can actually see them. So if you've never seen a dermal fibroblast, the column on the left where it says no UV, this is basically what these cells look like. They're not round cells, they're long and spindly. And so the upper column or the upper row, we have all the cells that are the control, so they didn't receive the anti-aging formula. And all the bottom ones were the ones that actually had the anti-aging formula for 14 days. So we know there's a big difference between UVA and UVB in terms of its overall energetic intensity. And so what we saw in the middle column is when you applied UVA radiation, it's kind of like it was a massacre of all the cells. And so clearly you can see the cells that were just kind of exploded. So we call apoptosis or cellular necrosis. But the thing I want to actually point out are the red dots. So there's a particular dye that is applied in these studies that says if any of the nuclear contents, so within the nucleus of the cell where the DNA is, if that gets breached, right, and exposed, then during when you look at it under a microscope, this particular type of microscope, it's going to fluoresce red. So we see here evidence that there's a lot of the cell DNA was compromised, basically. However, in the anti-aging formula treated cells, there's not a whole lot of difference. There's no red dye. So it was able to support the cell's ability to protect. Above all, the cell wants to prevent DNA damage, right? Because that is, that's so lethal. It's either going to cause cell death or it's going to cause cell mutation and potential initiation of cancer. But when we come over to the UVB, we kind of see a similar story. Now, I will say on the bottom, there are some changes to the anti-aging formula treated cells. However, as much as we see a reduction in the number of cells and a little bit in the morphology of the cells, we still don't see any red that you see in the one above, right? So like I said, really, if you can protect, if you can give the cells the tools to do, a better job at protecting the integrity of the DNA, that is going to support much better, healthier outcomes and mitigating the risk of skin cancers. A part of this study, we simply looked at the individual ingredients. So when you actually take individual ingredients with their own effect and you combine them together in a formulation, sometimes that creates an amplified effect, and sometimes it actually does the opposite, and we call it a subtractive. So it may have an additive effect, subtractive effect, or a true synergistic effect where 1 + 1 truly equals 3. So probably the most important thing to look at is compared to an equivalent dose of EPA and DHA, the active components of fish oil, which have been shown in the literature to be very effective against increasing the skin's burn threshold. We saw that the anti-aging formula was about 2 times more efficacious. That's pretty huge. But actually what's really interesting is when you actually add up all the individual ingredients and their efficacy, it's less than the sum of, or the actual result of the anti-aging formula. So in this case, it's not only additive, it's synergistic, right? So these components, the way that they're working in concert is creating additional effect beyond what we saw in individual ingredients on their own. This slide here is really looking at free radical damage. So these skin cells were stressed with hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide has a lot of relevance for the skin because as we age and under stressful conditions, we have an increase in hydrogen peroxide, especially in the scalp, right? So any of you who have really studied, the graying of hair or hair health in general, an accumulation of hydrogen peroxide in the scalp causes free radical damage to the follicle, and as well as the melanocytes that are producing the pigment that gives our hair color, right? So hydrogen peroxide is something that we want to build resilience against because it has a myriad of different effects on skin aging, as well as potentially even the graying of the hair. So after 14 days of treatment, these cells had 153% increased protection factor against the highly oxidizing effect of H2O2.
Mark, is that something that y'all think you might want to get a claim for? Is the anti-graying effect? I just see that as potentially a huge market for a lot of people, and that there's nothing out there.
Well, it would be an interesting path to pursue in a human-centered trial. I do want to call it the fact that these are in vitro studies, and to really get a claim associated with the ingredient or the formula, you really have to show efficacy in a human clinical trial. So this would be kind of stage 1. Say, okay, we saw an interesting effect. How does that translate into a human population? I truly do believe that there would be efficacy. How significant that's going to be, I really don't know. It would be really interesting to do this study, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that kind of concludes the big highlights of that, particular study that's going to publication now. Just kind of looking at from a retail perspective, this anti-aging formula, it's really coming in 2 versions, a liquid and a soft gel. It retails for $80. Aside from just, taking it from a spoon or swallowing a couple pills, The only real difference, the formulations are identical. You get 40 servings in the liquid, you get 30 servings in the soft gels. So they're both at an $80 price point. You get a little bit better value from the liquid. I like kind of, to have the best of both worlds. Certainly not traveling a lot now, but I tend to travel a lot with my work. And liquids you cannot travel with because it has to go in the refrigerator once it's open. So I usually travel with the soft gels. We can ask more questions. I mean, you can just jump in anytime along the way. We can wait till the end of the presentation. It's fine. I think.
Was there any difference in the testing on soft gel versus liquid and efficacy, or because I know you were saying you get the same formula, but as far as how you take it, does that make a difference? Is that asked?
We do get questions for sure. Typically, we say there's real no difference. And I wouldn't really even go as far as saying we should run a study to look at the difference between the two, because the liquid, of course, is extremely well absorbed. The soft gels, the gelatin that encapsulates these capsules, it breaks down so quickly in the presence of stomach acid that the contents are completely released in the gastric phase of digestion. And the ingredients inside the capsule is the exact same ingredients within the liquid. So I think they're pretty comparable. So it really comes down to what your personal preference may be, what's going to ensure the better compliance. And for some people like me, you kind of like the best of both worlds, just based on your lifestyle and things like travel.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I've got a quick question on the ingredients and the amount of each specific, additive, the EPA, the just everything, and why that was selected. I imagine there was rationale for it. Can you speak to that a little bit? I imagine that would be a question we would get asked.
Yeah, well, our clinical team really dug into the background research on each one of the ingredients. There is a fairly decent body of published research. And keep in mind too, things like fatty acids and antioxidants, we've been studying these for the last 17 years. Because this is really part of the core scientific platform in the previous company. So there was certainly a rationale based on pre-existing research that says, okay, well, if we formulate based on these principles and knowing how the different ingredients relate to each other, how they work in the body, there was this hypothesis that we could actually, certainly an additive effect would be fantastic. But what we were really excited to see is there's actually a synergistic effect. So once again, we understood the mechanism by which each of these ingredients are functioning on a cellular level that actually created, a much more, amplified effect, you could say. But then we had to do the scientific research to kind of validate that.
Great, thank you.
So the second product line, which briefly mentioned earlier, it's we call marine collagen plus cofactors. So clearly by the name, it contains collagen, and ingestible collagen is known as collagen peptides, hydrolyzed collagen peptides. So these are derived from animal sources, and they go through an enzymatic process to create a very small molecular weight so they can get absorbed. We'll talk a little bit later kind of how they work, but we supported this with 2 cofactor ingredients that are also can be rate limiting factors in the overall metabolic synthesis of these long collagen fibrils in the body. And so that is vitamin C and silicon. So collectively, the approved claims, it helps in collagen formation. It's great, very simple There are certainly hair and nail effects from this formulation, and it's not so much of an interest for me personally, but certainly we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback, positive feedback from our users to say, wow, I can't believe how thick and full my hair is. I can't believe how strong my nails are. So it's really good that we can kind of expand the claims to include that. Again, it's a great source of antioxidants to protect against free radicals. And in Canada, we have an approved claim for helps in wound healing. And that's really, the function of if you can stimulate collagen production, you absolutely can improve the way that your body can wound heal. Do wound healing. So specifically, marine-derived collagen is 4,500 milligrams. Vitamin C from an organic source, whole food source, 50 milligrams per serving. And from an organic source of silicon, the mineral silicon, there's 10 milligrams. And once again, we're really promoting this idea of synergy. These ingredients are all cofactors, we call them, in collagen formation. And it's great that a product like this can also taste good. People really love, fall in love with this product line. It's as simple as taking 2.5 teaspoons, mixing it with water. It's naturally sweetened with stevia, so a natural non-caloric, sweetening of the product. It comes in 3 different flavors. Well, really 2 flavors and 1 unflavored. Strawberry and coconut, those are natural flavors. They're certified organic. I know a lot of people have issues maybe seeing flavors in different products, consumable products. But these are absent of all the major allergens, and they're certified organic. So like the silicon and the vitamin C, we always try to favor organic where we can. And it retails for $52.
It actually retails for $54.
Oh.
My bad. My bad.
Yeah, so we kind of already talked, what does collagen do? And we know that as of the age of 20, but 20 20 seems like such a young age for stuff to be in decline. So let's not get too freaked out about this, but there is actually about a 1% a year decrease in collagen formation once we hit our early 20s. But if you can actually start to put together a skincare regimen like this, along with the other products that you guys are bringing to the marketplace, well, they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, certainly, if you want to look like you're 50 when you're actually 70 or 75 years old, I think that's the best time to start, is when you're in your 20s. So I think the next slide is really diving into how do collagen peptides work. And so the earlier thinking around collagen peptides was, well, if I consume orally collagen, it's providing the building blocks to form more collagen. And that seems like a very, logical rationale for, why we were seeing, really good efficacy in these human clinical trials. But that's actually not at all how this works. In fact, your body so collagen is a protein, so it's made of amino acids. And your body actually has really good stores of amino acids to rebuild all kinds of tissue. We're already rebuilding our muscle tissue all the time. Our organs are going through renewal all the time. So it's not about a deficiency in amino acids that causes that decline. What we do know is that when you hydrolyze collagen peptides, like in our product, you're forming very, very small fragments, including some of them are only 2 and 3 peptides long. 2 and 3 amino acids long. So they have a very small molecular weight, and some of them can actually absorb into bloodstream, without getting further broken down into individual amino acids. And that is very significant because there are certain amino acid sequences. It's almost like a little bit like, we'll say computer code, right? And so what happens is those fragments travel throughout the body and they arrive at areas where you have these, collagen fibroblasts, these dermal fibroblasts. And when you guys are familiar with like the receptors on cells, so the way you kind of get a cell to kind of initiate a certain metabolic function is you have to bind to the receptor site. So these very small collagen fragments can actually bind to the receptor sites that then send the signal to the fibroblasts is make more collagen, right? So part of this whole collagen decline over or from 20 all the way to 80 and beyond, what's really happening is it's losing the signal. Part of that is due to the amplification of the inflammation, so the environment. So if we improve the environment, we can start to see the fibroblasts improving the production of collagen. But then we can also add on top of that these little kind of collagen fragments, just a couple amino acids long, and they bind to the receptor sites, and they actually increase the amount of overall collagen production.
Mark, I'm sorry, can I jump in? Just if I understand that correctly, so you're saying a hydrolyzed collagen, because it's so small, can actually attach to the receptor site, stimulate at the fibroblast, stimulating more collagen. But if it's not hydrolyzed, or just kind of traditional collagen would be ingested, that would be broken down into amino acids, which don't stimulate the fibroblast. Is that accurate?
That's largely accurate.
Okay.
If we're kind of consuming non-hydrolyzed collagen in our diet, which, like we're eating sometimes animal products or animal skin,
right?
We'll get a very, very small amount of these peptides being formed, versus if we use this enzymatic process in the manufacturing, we get a lot more. But even still, if we think of per serving, 4,500 milligrams of hydrolyzed collagen from a serving here, only a small percentage of those are the actual bioactive peptides. Now, the other peptides that are not the bioactive peptides can still serve a nutritional function, supporting additional amino acid pools, but it's really that smaller portion within there that are the bioactive ones that get into the bloodstream and actually restore the signal within these fibroblasts. So the best way to optimize that function is actually to take it as a hydrolyzed collagen supplement versus consuming collagen or gelatin, which is typically what we see in people who eat animal products.
Thank you.
Well, this slide here is just basically saying, reinforcing the fact that the skin is a barrier. Collagen peptides, even the hydrolyzed collagen peptides, are still too big to penetrate beyond the epidermis. Topical products, you will find a lot of topical products that contain collagen. Some of these companies wrongly promote it for being able to improve the actual collagen in your skin. So you may ask, what is the benefit of adding collagen to a topical product? Well, collagen actually is really good at water binding. The same thing as high hyaluronic acid. They can really hold a lot of water. And so if you actually put these collagen peptides into the epidermis, it may support the water holding capacity of the epidermal layer, but it's not really doing what we would like it to do, which is stimulating collagen fibroblasts. And there's really three major sources available on the market today. The vast majority, probably 95% of the whole market is made up of porcine and bovine sources. There's a few reasons why that is. And I'm talking about the nutritional supplement industry. there's just such a huge abundance. So, you know, in terms of animal production, so protein production in the world, a huge part of that is coming from feedlots of cows and pigs. The animals are slaughtered, the hides are removed, they're thrown into big concrete vats. They kind of sit and stew in these kind of alkaline or acid chemicals to break down the matrix. Usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks. Then they can push it through a more refining process to extract the collagen. Well, what we do know about protein production today from cows and pigs is that it has the highest carbon footprint on the planet, and protein production today from animal sources, especially like cow, pig, lamb, etc. This is the third biggest source of climate change, especially its carbon footprint. If you combine all animal protein as well as food waste, collectively, they're the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases and climate change, surpassing even transportation. So, in terms of an environmental focus, probably we want to start to de-emphasizing derivatives of something from the cattle or the pork industry. Fish, on the other hand, wild captured fish from environmentally sustainable sources like the Icelandic and Norwegian cod, which is all MSC certified, which is the highest standard of environmental sustainability for fisheries, has a very, very low environmental footprint. But one of the other differences between that and cow and pig sources is how it's processed. So when the cod is caught, what they do is they immediately they remove the liver to make cod liver oil. They remove the cod fillets for the human protein consumption market, and then they actually pack the skins into freezer boxes, and they get frozen right away. They get stored in a warehouse, and of course, when it's time to produce collagen, they thaw the skins, and the whole process only takes about 36 hours, as opposed to 2 to 3 weeks. So in 36 hours, you can have highly refined, high quality, marine-derived or fish skin-derived collagen peptides. It's also becoming more clear that the marine-derived or fish-derived collagen peptides are more bioactive than the bovine and porcine sources. It looks like it's probably around 1.5 to 1.6 times more efficacious. So looking at it that way, you could say, well, at the same gram for gram dose, you're going to get a better effect at stimulating collagen production from a fish-derived source. Or you could say for the same price, you can use a smaller dose of marine-derived, collagen peptides. So those are really the two major things when we think about, the ingestible collagen category. So we talked about the core product line as it exists today. We're doing a ton of research and product development, especially when you are a Canadian, company. The timelines are quite long in terms of going through all the necessary product development phases, stability testing, compiling your product license application with all the safety, efficacy, and then it gets filed with Health Canada, and that can take another usually 6 to 9 months to get your approval. So that being said, and these are subject to some change, what we have built into our product roadmap is by the end of 2020, we are looking to introduce a product called Reset, which is containing active sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is the active ingredient that makes broccoli so beneficial for cellular detoxification. So this is really starting to support this idea that the skin is a secondary detoxification organ, and that liver-skin axis, right? That's very, very important, especially when we think about things like hormonally promoted adult acne and adolescent acne, that this can be very, very effective in terms of helping the liver to metabolize those hormones so that they're not actually creating these hormonal acne lesions in the skin. We do, like the success of our collagen line, we also want to come up with convenient travel packs. So, the small flexible stick packs. Looking beyond 2020 into 2021, we will introduce our first product, which is really addressing that gut-skin axis, right? So really kind of helping to modulate and improve gut function, reducing gut inflammation, and obviously the benefits that will derive for the skin. As far as psychodermatology, we're still early stages, but we intend to introduce a product in 2021 that we call Mood and Motivation. And, so this is obviously helping us to reduce some of those, things like cortisol and noradrenaline, and some of these factors that really start to kind of wreak havoc on, our skin's ability to regulate itself. Plus, it's also helping people support, better overall kind of well-being, because there's the physiological side of well-being, but you also need the psychological side of well-being. And we've created a world that's really hard to live in, so we want to provide people with tools to support their physical and their emotional health. In 2022, then we get into something really interesting, which is related to our sister company, which is called Small Food. And Small Food is pre-commercial, but hoping by 2022 we'll be in a position to provide strategic supply of ingredients to Ben Beauty. And what Small Food does, it is a novel microalgae fermentation company. So using fermentation biotechnology is producing a very unique strains of microalgae at large scale, and then processing the algae biomass into nutraceutical ingredients. So one of them would be a extremely high quality protein. So the most sustainable protein on the planet. And it's, even though it's considered vegan, plant-based, the amino acid and nutritional composition of this protein is more reflective of like beef protein. So it's more reflective of animal composition versus, pea protein and soy protein, which are have very low levels of some important amino acids like, methionine. So that's kind of a key component of helping to maintain lean, body tissues. A lot of people don't realize in the aging process, one of the things that you have to pay attention to is that the actual volume of our face and our body is decreasing. So at a certain stage of our life, our skin is not able to respond to changes in the shape of our body, right? So if our skin is really fixed, but our bones are reducing in their overall mass and our muscles are reducing in their overall mass, what happens is that starts to cause the sagging of the skin. But there's a lot of things that we can do to help maintain facial volume, and that's improving bone density, bone mass, and as well as lean muscle tissue. So some of these concepts like very high quality proteins like this can really support someone with that overall kind of maintenance of the lean body mass. The other side of this are the omega-3 fatty acids that tend to come from fish sources, but we can actually now through this Small Food platform produce them from algal sources. And the ultimate goal then would be to have a vegan version of the anti-aging formula, which is going to be rebranded as Renew and Protect, trying to move a little bit away from the term anti-aging. It's certainly not a term that everyone feels comfortable using because it has a very negative connotation. So we've been working over the last 6 months to kind of make that changeover. I think Jennifer will talk about that another time.
Yes.
So lastly, if I still have your attention by this point, you know, proof is really in the pudding, and we outsourced some before and afters that I think really tell a really cool story about, you know, the only change is introducing the Ben products. These subjects were asked to kind of maintain a consistency with everything they do from a topical perspective, lifestyle, diet, et cetera. And a lot of people invest a lot of money in topical skincare. And there's this internal belief that, well, I'm buying really good products. There's probably not more that I can do. And certainly those products are offering a benefit, but you know, what we want to do is kind of have them rethink, you know, what the importance of the inside out is. And so the before and afters, a lot of these are very kind of focused on that inflammatory, like chronic inflammatory state that a lot of people, you know, have that are, it's not an attractive side to our skin. It creates a lot of issues with skin tone and, you know, proper texture. It can create hyperpigmentation. It can just create skin sensitivity. So it doesn't feel so great when we touch our skin. Some of these just kind of a general kind of improvement of skin brightness, skin tone. We all kind of carry some level of skin inflammation, and for some people it's very overt, but some people it's very subtle. But nevertheless, you know, when we improve the overall kind of skin climate, it's starting to help with that rejuvenating effect. You know, and that rejuvenating effect then could manifest well. We have more skin brightness and more evenness of skin tone. We start to get that dewy effect that, you know, that everyone's kind of always looking for. Yeah, so this one, a little bit of, you know, atopic dermatitis, you know, a little bit of kind of scarring from blemishes. Overall, once again, you know, an improvement of the overall skin texture and tone. This one, we like to say, just a general kind of turning back the clock, so to speak. You can tell her enthusiasm on the right. And these are just after 3 months. And Jennifer, are these just anti-aging formula or both products?
Joey had both products.
Both products for this one. Okay, fantastic. This one, a young gentleman, but probably I think this is more to do with kind of he had a bit of acne, you know, chronic, you know, blemishing of the skin. Product, of course, works really well from the inside out to kind of resolve that.
He also had both products.
He had both products. I think this one here was just the anti-aging formula. This is actually correct. A woman who is a makeup artist and was always very self-conscious about her skin because she suffered from chronic skin irritation. And, you know, it's awesome. You know, like you resolve the underlying issue, improve the skin climate, and the skin starts to do its kind of own, you know, kind of magic. It's the rejuvenating effect. Like I said, there's just so much, you know, unlocked or locked up potential that we want to unlock no matter what age. You know, this person, Krista, she was only 32 years old. So not a lot of overt signs of aging, but nevertheless, you know, a fairly, you know, pronounced condition of skin inflammation. And I think this last but not least, this is in all transparency, this is my sister. My sister had a bad incident where she was severely burned and second and even a few third-degree burns. And it was very traumatic for her. Thankfully, she had glasses on that day and it protected her eyes, but she was very traumatized and thought she would be, permanently scarred from this. She was already taking the Bend formulas. I think she increased her dose 3 or 4-fold. Maybe Jennifer, you even know, but
She double dosed. She did morning and night for both. And it was a squash that blew up in her face.
yeah, she took a squash out of the oven and blew up in her face.
Everywhere.
I think it was more than double dose. I think she was taking a tablespoon of the anti-aging formula. So you can see here, it's kind of fairly early on. So of course, these were all bandaged up, but she took the bandages off to show the progression. And yeah, this is just after 3 days. Eventually it got to the point where the attending physician was astounded by the quantity and the quality of new skin cells that were starting to form underneath. So this was, something that was observed by the physicians, that this is not a typical progression. In fact, we get to the point, thankfully, this is just after 5 days. I don't know how many days we have here. 6, 7.
Yeah.
Where certainly it reduced a lot of the inflammation. There's an abundance of new skin that has formed. The beauty of this, of course, this has happened. This is 2 years ago now.
Yep, 2 years.
2 years. Today, you would never know. There isn't a single scar. You would never know that she had this severe burn episode.
You could have known after 3 months. Like it was unbelievable. So there's hope for you, James. Your product's arriving.
I need it badly.
So
that wound healing claim is fantastic.